I feel like we're in to use a sports metaphor, the early innings of this notion of the centricity of fandom and having businesses spring from that of course ultimately are in service of sports teams, media companies, and entertainment. But man, and this comes back to the very first question you posed about kind of some people say this is the worst time in the generation for seed, and I'm like, no, you've got it wrong. Just everybody wants to back the next AI ... And I'm much more focused on, you do that. Give me this pool of technology from which to draw, and my founders are going to help build incredible applications that make teams' relationship with fans relationship with the teams, and fans' relationships with other fans that much better.
Welcome to The Peel. I'm your host, Turner Novak, founder of Banana Capital. Today's guest is Roger Ehrenberg. You might know Roger from starting IA Ventures in 2009, an early-stage venture capital firm that proceeded to return numerous 10x funds to his investors. This went so well that he retired in 2021, starting his own family office to invest in sports. This also went so well that he was compelled to get back into the game, starting Game Changers Ventures to invest in the technology behind sports, media, and entertainment.
I see such a massive opportunity in pre-seed and seed, just not in the areas that most of venture dollars are currently flowing to.
We talk about the current seed stage venture environment, what he learned investing in sports teams, how COVID changed sports, what he's investing in today, characteristics of the top founders he's backed, advice for emerging managers, and his real estate and consumer brand projects in Detroit. A quick thank you to Michael Kim, Jesse Beyroutey, James Fitzgerald, and Dan Fader for helping brainstorm topics for Roger. A reminder, I publish episodes of The Peel every week, exploring the world's greatest startup stories, just like this one. Check out the back catalog of over 100 episodes, and tune in next week for a conversation with Will Gabrick, President of Technology and Business at Stripe, on stablecoins, AI, and if they'll ever go public. Now, a quick word from Hanover Park. Hanover Park vertically integrates fund admin, portfolio management, and the LP experience for finance and investment teams. Most of you have probably interfaced with a fund admin provider in some way. They're a necessary evil for every type of asset manager across not just venture, but also private equity and private credit. They provide bookkeeping and accounting so investment firms can report to their investors on a quarterly basis. What's crazy is they charge hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars per year to basically not screw up your accounting. They stitch together third-party software like QuickBooks, Bill.com, Salesforce, and Excel, and then throw a bunch of bodies at you. And that's where Hanover Park comes in. They built their own accounting system from scratch, which ingests all your firm's data and documents, and their AI-native solution automates all the manual work that drives private market investors crazy. Head to hanoverpark.com/Turner and try the AI native ERP for private market funds. That's HANOVERPARK.com/Turner and 10x your fund admin. Roger, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Turner. Great to be here.
I'm excited. So you were mentioning just before this, we were talking a little bit about like current status of the seed stage market. A lot of people will say, oh, it's the worst place to be investing, et cetera, et cetera. But you're saying you're really excited about seed. So why are you excited about seed stage investing right now?
So, kind of throughout my career, the notion of being contrarian has always been kind of a hallmark. And I've generally wanted to look for the places where people are most uncomfortable and most concerned, and generally view that as fertile ground. And in this case, I think that really applies. And that's honestly the impetus for me getting to kind of formally get back into the venture game as opposed to investing out of my family office. It's because I see such a massive opportunity in pre-seed and seed, just not in the areas that most of venture dollars are currently flowing to. Not that things that we invest in don't have AI embedded in them. They certainly do. Everything does. But in terms of not investing in base models or, vertical AI that's really very much around, AI agents and productivity, things I'm doing in sports media entertainment intersected with technology is really very underinvested in. And there are very few people kind of like me with my orientation and background that are kind of devoting their career to this area right now.
I want to ask you more about that, but hitting a little bit more in the AI stuff. shouldn't you be investing there? Because the companies are growing fast, right? The follow-on capital is being attracted there. Like, in theory, that's kind of the recipe for getting these maybe temporary, maybe permanent venture-like returns. Is it like something that's going on where you're like, this just doesn't make sense for me? Like, are there certain pieces of it that you feel like the cracks are starting to show? Or
So I think there's a few pieces to it. Part of it is personal and part of it is environment. On the personal side, when I, left IA Ventures a little over 4 years ago now, focusing on kind of hardcore tech and, harder science and tech applications, I did that for a long time and I really enjoyed it. And, part of my deciding to make a change, aside from, giving Jesse and Brad the opportunity to really own IA and build it in their vision and to take it forward, was for me to express these new passions and interests that I discovered, and this notion of sports media entertainment, the centricity of fandom, the value of intellectual property, really sent me in a different direction, both kind of emotionally and also from an investing standpoint, really seeing opportunities that I had very much been closed off to during my time as more of a traditional tech VC. And now in today's world, look, there are obviously unbelievably impactful companies being born in and around AI, and hundreds of billions and now literally trillions of dollars are being deployed in this space. And it's not to say that there aren't, and there are clearly firms that are going to make generational returns on these investments. It's just not clear to me that being a seed stage investor, even with my, my track record and my brand, will allow me to have the impact and to garner the returns that I could through this alternative strategy.
So then can you maybe talk a little bit about, it's called Game Changers Ventures, right? Mm-hmm. Can you talk about just the arc of how you sort of got into this, decided, because I think you retired. I don't think you wanted to do this necessarily back in 2021. Can you just take us through that, retiring, leaving IA, and then, okay, now say you're starting Game Changers, or I guess technically a couple months ago, probably.
Sure. So this is the second kind of major transition in my work life. The first one was in late 2004 when I left Wall Street, and then spent really the next 4 or 5 years investing in seed stage tech, building a whole new set of networks, developing a whole new set of theses around how the future would unfold and kind of my role in that. And then that's ultimately what kicked off founding IA Ventures around the notion of big data as an investable theme. Here, again, almost I had a 17-year Wall Street career. And then after 17 years of doing early stage tech, I had this sense of, I want to change. And tired, I don't know if it was so much fatigue as it was that sense that I wasn't personally feeling like I was having the impact I wanted to have. And I'm the kind of person that if I'm not all the way in, I'm not in at all. There's really not a middle ground. And when I could feel that intensity and passion waning, I had said to myself when I started IA and ultimately brought on Brad and Jesse, that if I wasn't going to be all in, I needed to leave. And so I did exactly what I had said I would do.
Is there something that you picked up on where you noticed you weren't quite in it? Like if somebody's in the middle of something and, I don't know, you've been gung-ho about it for a decade, was there anything specific where you're like, you know what, I'm not quite as passionate about this as I used to be?
And it's interesting, Turner. I wish I could say that there were objectively observable signs, but for me, the same thing I believe that's made me a successful, very early stage investor, pre-product market fit, often pre-product, is that I have this instinct and I'm very in touch with my internal state.
Mm-hmm.
And it became clear to me over, it was probably a 6-month period when I was very much feeling like what had been working incredibly hard and feeling incredibly passionate and incredibly proud started to feel like work.
Hmm.
And for me, when I'm happy, work isn't work.
You'll work like 18 hours a day.
It's
Whatever
work is life. It just becomes embedded in my consciousness. And it doesn't mean that I don't do other super fun things, but it's just something that just beneath the surface, I'm always percolating. I'm always thinking. I'm always, just like building in my head.
I think of it as the shower test. Like when I'm showering and there's just like no distractions, like what do you think about? And it's like, oh, that one portfolio company, you have this idea, or like, oh, she would be really good for that designer role that they're hiring for, or like, oh, he should meet Roger because he might help with, whatever. That's usually my test. I use that for investing. It's like the shower test. It's like, would I just naturally be thinking about this and just enjoy, I don't know, the osmosis of being around it, I guess. And when I lose that for something, or when I don't have it, for me, that's like a bar that I kind of use, the shower test. I don't know.
I don't know if you have seen me mention something like that on other conversations I've had. I mean, that is exactly the way I do my best thinking.
So your showers are drifting from tech, big data, fintech, and maybe the AI. You just like couldn't quite. It wasn't quite. There wasn't entering the shower yet. So you were transitioning to more. Okay, explore it. And
it's where the processing went from problem solving around portfolio companies, coming up with ideas, thinking about the next thing I was excited about investing in, to, wow, like, why do I feel the way I feel? Why do I not feel that intensity for this work that had really been just so inspiring and exciting for 17 years?
Yeah.
And that was definitely part of the catalyst for me shifting, very similar to the transition off of Wall Street. I had done something that without any forethought or thesis got me to move in a totally different direction when I created this space. Was when I was on the street, I made a few angel investments in early stage technology companies. And then when I left, I started spending more time with those companies. And that's really what provided the impetus for me to tap into that passion and excitement about seed stage tech investing, and set me off on a mission that would define my next 17 years. Here, I had the opportunity during COVID to invest in the Miami Marlins. And
did you invest?
I did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm a minority owner of Miami Marlins, and on the advisory board. And, that was something, firstly, never in a million years that I think I would be in a position to be a part owner of a professional sports team, much less a baseball team.
Yeah, that's like every kid's dream. Like teenage kid dream is like, I want to own a sports team when I grow up.
Well, I would say, Turner, I was so far from that. I wouldn't even say it was a dream. It was not even anything my mind could consider, even if it's in its most aspirational state.
Yeah.
So that was dizzying to be able to even consider doing that and ultimately doing it. But again, I was still at IA when that happened. That was probably about 6-9 months before I left IA. I closed that investment.
So when you made that, were you still kind of all in on IA, or was there like a seed of questioning things?
No, I was still all in. So it wasn't like, oh, this is going to be my glide path towards transitioning out. Literally, it was just an investment.
Yeah.
But when other things conspired to get me to just kind of acknowledge that the time had come for me to kind of figure out the next phase of my life, I then had this thing that was very significant that I could start really getting my mind around. And I'll say, once I made that investment and became public, I started to get a bunch of deal flow in and around sports and media tech. And so that's kind of bubbling in the background.
Yep.
And then for other personal reasons, I decided to leave AA. But then again, once that space was created, I was then able to really dig in, and in exactly the same way that I spent those years dog fooding both my own investment acumen, building this whole new set of networks, and ultimately developing a new set of theses around the future. That's exactly what happened here. And it was almost a similar amount of time between the time I left IA and the time that I started Game Changers that I went through this percolation process.
So we've got probably 16 and a half years more of you permeating the sports investment world.
Well, no, so you need to tack on the 4. So, call it 12, 13. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so what's generally the thesis in sports? Because I think I've come around to changing this a little bit over the past couple of years. I maybe have had the same realization that you've had, that there's different opportunities. But I feel like historically, you think of sports, you think of owning a sports team, and you just think it's a trophy asset. They don't really produce cash flow. They perform pretty well, honestly. It's just the sports teams, like historically. But like that's kind of the Warren Buffett value investor type scrutiny of the industry. So with that kind of like lens coming in, like what are the opportunities in sports? Like, because you obviously made a huge bet on this. You obviously think there's a lot of ways to make money or build businesses in sports. How do you think about it?
So I really view it in 2 different pieces. So one is sports franchise, which is what you just mentioned. And so, yeah, at this point, out of our family office, we have interests in several sports franchises, minority owners of the Marlins, of the Alpine Formula One racing team.
You own a soccer team too?
And Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals. We are new investors in the Detroit WNBA team.
Oh, that's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing.
We're also, it's a big thing.
Is that new, or am I just out of the loop?
It is new. I mean, it was this year. So a group that was led by Tom Gores and Arn Tellem, so the Pistons ownership. We've been working on this for quite some time. 3 new WNBA franchises were awarded: Cleveland, Detroit, and Philly. And so, yes, we got one of the 3 new franchises, and we are significant players in that new team. And then also the new TGL expansion golf team, the Motor City Golf Club.
What is TGL, the golf league?
No, that's Tomorrow Golf League. Tomorrow Sports.
Okay.
That's where they play the indoor golf in the stadium in Palm Beach, SoFi Stadium, where you have Tiger and Rory McIlroy, literally the best golfers in the world, are golfing in a team golf format in this state-of-the-art indoor facility with stadium seating. Unbelievable, mind-blowing technology. It's on ESPN, and we're just about to kick off our 2nd season. There were 6 original franchises. They just awarded a 7th, and a group led by Michael Hamp and Kevin Kelleher led this Michigan group, and it's wildly exciting. I mean, we could talk about that by itself for a long time. I'm a huge fan of what Michael McCarley and the Tomorrow team are doing in applying, kind of technology and innovative formats to new kinds of sports entertainment. And kind of the first product out of Tomorrow is TGL, that was done specifically with Tiger and Rory as the anchors. And it really shines a light on the excitement of team golf. And then you think about, just having gone through the Ryder Cup, this is kind of like that level of energy and excitement, and with that team format, that's very different than the traditional, PGA tournaments.
So the way that it's different from classic golf, when you just think about like growing up watching it on TV, everything is team based, and you do it in a stadium.
Yes.
Is it like 18-hole course thing, or is it like custom built? So like, what's the actual gameplay look like?
So think of it as like the most mind-bending golf simulator you could possibly imagine, this scale of it.
Okay.
So you're hitting into a simulator.
Okay.
But the visual experience is similar to if you were bird's eye view in an outdoor real tournament, the ball flight, but then of course there's advanced statistics and everything flashing on the bottom of the screen.
Yep.
You see this both in stadium and on TV, but then there is a physical rough and green that adjusts based on the hole. So the undulation, the shape of the green actually changes. So it's hard to describe. You really should pull up some YouTube videos on it. And again, the new season is going to be starting soon, but it is. At first when it came out, I was like, "What is going on here?"
And that seems like a video game in a way.
It
like a
does,
person video game.
But here's the thing: the players love it. Again, remember, this is not just some players in these contests. You have these teams. These teams have many, if not most, of the best golfers in the world. In this setting that you've got fans who are loud, the energy is palpable.
It's like the opposite of normal golf.
It's the opposite, but they're having so much fun. It is, but it isn't. It's like every hole is like the 16th hole at Waste Management, which is that stadium setting where literally it's like you have the crowd over the hole and somebody makes a bad putt. The crowd's like, boo, boo. And then somebody does something amazing and the place explodes. And so the players love it because firstly, it's not, you're not at the Masters. So it's more relaxed. They want to win. I mean, these are some of the most competitive people on the planet.
Yeah.
And they've got teammates. They want to play well for their teammates. They want to play well for their own personal brand, and they want to win. But because it's in this setting that itself is more fan-centric and fans are more a part of it, they're just having a good time and they're more emotive. You're like, when somebody makes it, like you could just see their raw expression more than you would at a traditional golf tournament. So yes, the technology aspect is next level, crazy video game, but the emotions and the human aspect is very real.
It seems more fun to watch too, because I never got into golf because I'm just like, it's just like some people standing around and you're like walking. Like I don't like golfing because it takes like 4 hours and it's mostly just walking around and like watching. But this sounds so much more exciting. Like being in the crowd, and even like being in the stadium versus lined up along like a little rope thing and like a course out in the beating sun. I mean, maybe that's fun for some people, but this sounds like a little bit more fun to watch too.
It's super cool. And you'll see that the TV product is really, really good. And well, I think there's another phenomenon here that we can tie into the other part of the discussion. So all the sports franchise stuff, Turner, this is not part of Game Changers. This is all part of our family office. So our family office invest in sports franchises. And I think we're also, I can't mention the name, but we're more investors in one of the best European football teams in the world. So what that's given me, aside from this great portfolio of sports assets, is an incredible network, because the people that tend to be owners of these franchises are both very successful and generally have more than one interest in sports. So the relationships that I've been able to build have been valuable, but also the insights on what is going well at the team level and what are areas that are weak. And I would also say things like my involvement with, Michigan athletics and my knowledge of college sports also informs how I think about the venture side of the business, which was done out of Ehrenberg Capital, out of our family office, where over the 4 years, we deployed basically a seed fund's worth of capital in sports tech, gaming, media, analytics related to this space. We've now raised this $100 million institutional fund to actually build a full team to prosecute this opportunity. But the insights from the franchise side have been unbelievably valuable and continue to be valuable, both in terms of new product creation and ultimately go to market for these companies.
So really quick on the TGL business model for something like that, is it mostly you do like streaming licenses, sponsorships, tickets, concessions, merch? Like, is it generally what the model looks like for something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the way you would think about any professional sports enterprise. There's like the league, right? There's like the tomorrow level, and there are the teams. And so, as I said, there were 6 original teams. We are the 7th, and we will start playing in 27. And yes, so there's the broadcast deal. So there's the network, and then you have league branding, but then the teams themselves run their businesses much in the way that an MLB team, an NFL team, an NBA team would. So they make the in-market revenue, and where branding, advertising, sponsorship, and tickets and merch drive most of the revenue.
It feels like, generally speaking, there's like a little bit of kind of gambling and betting that's slowly weaving its way into kind of the business model. I think it was Mark Cuban said specifically part of why he sold part of the Mavericks was because he was trying to, he didn't like that he had to invest in real estate development and like kind of building this whole complex around the team. So he was kind of starting to remove himself out. Is that becoming a big part of a lot of this? Like real estate, the casino, like in-person entertainment, betting, gambling?
Massive.
Yeah.
If you look at the stadium projects that have been done really over, I would say the past decade, but it's certainly picking up steam. Every project has a significant real estate component to it, where, one of the, like the ballpark at Arlington or the Battery in Atlanta, there are a couple of early examples of that where they become entertainment districts.
Yeah.
So the thing that Mark viewed as a bug is actually a feature.
Yeah.
And while it has a much, you could argue, a longer time horizon, because like literally if you're saying we're going to do this now to get the permitting and all of the requisite approvals and the financing, and then you're shovel ready, and then you build. I mean, it's
if I stage as a building too.
So,
right?
it is. I mean, like literally, it's the stuff that's closest, and then it's concentric circles out.
Yep.
And again, in some cases, there's literally entire neighborhoods being built around these stadiums.
Yeah.
But stadiums add value. They add real value to the real estate that's proximate. And then you think it's not just residential, it's all of this entertainment that goes along with it. Yeah. So 100%, there's not one professional team owner that is not a group that's not thinking about how do we expand our footprint. And if it's a team that is playing in a stadium that's, kind of aged, then the question is renovate versus build net new. And if renovate, well, are there areas around the stadium that would help you improve the long-term economic picture because of these ancillary revenues? Or are you fairly trapped? And if trapped, you've either got to get a great deal on renovation and like a new lease from the municipality, or you may look for another place to play. So that dynamic is creating both tension and opportunity within the communities where these stadiums exist. And you see this play out all the time. It just played out in Philadelphia with the Sixers stadium. I mean, that took years to kind of figure out, was it going to be in a new location in Chinatown or the existing location? A lot of tension there, because also there's, with tight local budgets, it's, well, do we give tax breaks in order for a stadium to either stay or expand their footprint? Or do we just say no? Well, if you look at like what's happened with the Tampa Bay Rays, like that's been like literally practically a decade-long struggle. And then, Stu Sternberg just sold the team, but it's a huge issue.
And it feels like that could be a bigger problem if we, as I kind of think about, I don't know, the 20, 30, 40 years ago way of doing this. It's just, there's a stadium, there's just a massive parking lot around it. Like that's kind of when I think of the classic football stadium that's in America. That's the picture I maybe think of. But to your point, it's like you have a stadium, but there's like restaurants, commercial development, offices, casino, movie theater, people that live around the ring. It's like you basically build a ton of taxable value there. Like the city can make a ton of money from just commercial activity happening versus just a massive parking lot that's like, a square mile or 5 square miles just around the stadium.
And I think this was, Mary Madelson's vision of why she wanted to, buy out Mark Cuban, with the Mavericks. And then I think, look at what Steve Cohen's doing around Citi Field. And, the talk of the new hotel and casino complex and a new soccer stadium, all basically in the parking lot of in and around Willets Point. So you're 100% right. I mean, this is happening everywhere. We have these couple of very proximate live examples of it happening like in real time.
Yep.
So I think that is the harbinger of the future. And you've seen also new groups emerge that are designing these districts. Again, it's moved so far beyond stadium.
The whole
now
neighborhood really.
That's exactly right. So you're even seeing more kind of interesting competition in and around that space because you look at every professional team and they need to have a strategy.
Interesting. And one thing I've heard you say before, which I'm not sure I understood your answer, so I want to ask you again because I'm curious. You said that COVID really changed sports. I don't know if that was like an offhand thing or if that's like a big thing that you believe. How do you think sports changed from COVID?
So I would say in 2 huge ways. One, it hastened the rise of emerging sports as people had kind of more time to think about entertaining content that was broadly accessible. I mean, the explosion of emerging sports formats, either leveraging existing sports or designing net new sports, the rise of kind of Google and Twitch as free distribution channels, so not needing a network deal in order to get your show shown. We had been talking about golf earlier, good golf and all of the different, YouTube golfers, even with like Bryson DeChambeau now, his, one of the best golfers in the world, his participation. COVID was a massive kind of catalyst for this phenomenon where people could sit at home, watch great content, and see these new innovative sports and sports formats emerge.
I wonder if the kind of like the dearth of Hollywood content, because you definitely there's probably like almost 2 years, it feels like, where the studios weren't, I think they were like weren't allowed to shoot or something like that. So there's probably this massive hole of just fewer good movies, good TV shows, and sports content had the opportunity because it was kind of like a guy golfing on YouTube, like lower budget, quote unquote. Like it's just a guy with a team. You can go out, shoot, make some good content, and way cheaper also than like $200 million crazy production. Maybe more interesting too, but they might not have that opportunity had the studios like vacated the showtime or the airtime.
So that was one piece, 100%. That was a piece of it. Another piece of it was there was a period when there were very few professional sports that were being played.
Yeah. Fair.
And so just the tonnage of pro sports content went way down. Well, how do you fill it? And there was this phenomenon like ping pong, right? Like Eastern European ping pong was a huge thing, and people were betting crazy amounts of money
like memes about people
on ping pong.
Yep.
But that's just a single example. But there was so much of that happening. And again, I think the distortions of COVID unleashed creativity that you couldn't have imagined. I remember the story of Shane Copeland of Polymarket developing Polymarket during COVID in his bathroom.
Yep.
So there was definitely this limitations. I think this is a great metaphor for startup culture. Like all of these constraints unleashed all of this creativity.
Yeah.
Because you gotta.
Yeah.
Right?
We're all locked in our homes. And
what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I think that was one part of it.
Okay.
The other part of it is the continued polarization of society and the fact that I think, sadly, a lot of people are really stressed and unhappy about the direction of their societies. And I'm not just saying the U.S. I'm saying just
globally.
Generally. There's a lot of tension, uncertainty, concern, felt by the kind of younger generation coming of age. There's something about sports that is a unifier. It brings people together. And this then gets back to the original thesis of when I transitioned out of IA, started spending time in and around sports. Why did I decide to go all in on this space? I think it is among the most...
Would you say wholesome?
Yeah, but not like recession-proof, like durable assets because of affinity and because of passion and, from an investment perspective, the value of scarce IP. And that if you control that, but it's something ultimately that brings people together, but is also highly monetizable as you're able to deepen fandom, then it really occupies this unusual place in the universe where, there could be wars, there could be bad things that happen, there could be strife. There's always sports, and it's always been that way. But now that sports is bigger than ever and more accessible than ever, I think it's more powerful than ever.
Yeah, it's more global, I feel like.
More global, but also multi-platform where you don't need cable to see sports.
Yeah.
Right. And simply, if all you did was had, YouTube and YouTube TV, you could cover a huge amount of the landscape. You're not going to see everything in these days because of fragmentation across streaming services.
Yeah.
Amazon's got their stuff, Peacock's got their, et cetera, et cetera.
But you'll see highlights and like the clips. You'll see all the best parts.
Sure. So it's like, yes, the barrier towards accessing professional sports as a viewer has gone down. As an in-stadium, it has gone up because the price of attending a sporting event has gone up a lot, which is partly why you're also starting to see innovation around that with like what Steve Ballmer's doing with the Clippers.
What's he doing?
So he just opened this brand new $2.2 billion stadium with the latest technology. And there are there's this dedicated fan section where the ticket prices are kept super low. So like you don't need to have a lot of money to be able to see a basketball game. Whereas right now to take your family afford to a Knicks game is, I can't even count the dollars, which is why so much of in-person is now like corporate and people related to business because they have the money. But he's done, and also things like there's several teams are now experimenting with ultra low cost concessions. So like inexpensive hot dogs, inexpensive sodas. You can bring your family of four for not $500. It can be $200 or $250.
Yeah. So why did we need this like dedicated fan or like the ultra low cost concessions? Like, why don't they just make them cheaper? Or like, and then how do you specifically segment that out? Like, are there like 10 seats just like in a certain spot that are cheaper, or like how did that all work?
Well, again, I think Steve Ballmer's example is an N of one right now, and lots of people are experimenting. But he literally built this into the stadium and the fandom concept. He has a thing called, I think it's called the fan wall. It's not 10 seats. It's thousands of seats.
Are they like worse quality seats?
No, they're at one end of the court. I don't think so.
And they're
they're not like up in the upper ring or anything like that. Okay. It's like a wall. It's like, think about it like this: if you go to a European football game,
yep,
you have these fan clubs that generally occupy a section of the stadium, and they tend to be in one of the ends.
They're usually louder and they do the chants and stuff.
That's the fan wall.
Got it. Okay. Because I've seen that kind of discourse online where people will say like you watch a Knicks game, or like you look at a Knicks game and you compare like, you know, the 80s, the 90s with today. And like back in the 90s, it was like all just people in jerseys, cheering, super pumped. You could stay, it's just like some dudes in suits and some models, and they're like on their phones or something. And it's just completely different fan like experience or engagement that you get from the fans. Like the true fans are almost not at the games because it's like, you know, 4 or 5 figures to get that front row seat. You basically need to be, it's like corporate, to your point. He'll be or Spike Lee, I guess. Yeah.
But at least he's a real fan.
Yeah.
No, 100%. So this notion of democratization, I think, is super important. And again, a lot of the things that we're looking at Game Changers are about the fan and are about delivering a better experience to the individual. Because ultimately, look, selling to teams direct, and I think what a lot of people think, oh, the TAM's not big enough in sports venture because there are only N number of teams and they're hard to sell to. Totally. I would not have started a venture firm if all I was doing was enterprise sales to teams. Teams are notoriously difficult to sell to. They're cheap, like many enterprise buyers. I'm just saying they're not different than an enterprise, except most are more tech backwards than most corporations that we would be selling SaaS software to. That said, they are extremely focused on how to best expand and engage their fan base. So that whole sphere of issues, which is direct fan experience, it could be payment in the stadium, it could be media, it could be, how, we're looking at a company now where there's a like AI powered experience that gives you unbelievable nuance with its, think of querying one of the big LLMs, and it gets to know you and will give you this incredible content back. Like all that stuff involves serious tech, but is really about tightening the relationship between a fan and a team, or fans with other fans who are fans of the team. And that's incredibly valuable, right? Anytime you can drive engagement and stickiness in material ways, you can make a lot of money.
So it's really thinking about how to make the fans care more and spend more money, probably, or just increase the value, the lifetime value of a fan instead of LTV of a customer. Instead of lifetime value.
Care more, it's they care, but they're poorly served. Like I don't know about you, most of the stuff I get from the teams I like stinks. It's terrible.
It's just like an email with like a MailChimp template, and it's like season tickets are now on sale or whatever.
Great, right? It doesn't know me from anything.
Yeah.
And then it's either that or I get spammed by premium ticket sellers because they know, oh, so you bought legend seats to the Yankees, so we know you have money. Do you want to buy a package? It's just, and I get why these things exist. And sure, whatever. I've got some young, nieces and nephews in my family that are doing that exact job, and it's a tough job.
Hmm.
But there's so much more to, especially today, leveraging technology, leveraging data to provide what feels like a one-to-one experience with the fan, that it's like, and that's the beauty. It's not even like you need to change somebody's mind. They already are a fan. They already care. Give them more ways to express that fandom, more ways to feel connected, more contextually appropriate offers, more opportunities to engage with the team in ways that are meaningful to them, which is not a MailChimp email.
Yeah.
So
we need MailChimp for sports, or maybe a lot more than that.
Yeah, I feel like we're in to use the sports metaphor, the early innings of this notion of the centricity of fandom and having businesses spring from that of course ultimately are in service of sports teams, media companies, and entertainment. But man, it's just like, and this comes back to the very first question you posed about kind of some people say this is the worst time in the generation for seed. And I'm like, no, you've got it wrong. Just everybody wants to back the next AI ... And I'm much more focused on, you do that. Give me this pool of technology from which to draw, and my founders are going to help build incredible applications that make teams' relationship with fans relationship with the teams, and fans' relationships with other fans that much better.
So you think, is that what you're kind of doing differently than everyone else in the market? And then maybe you have more of like an institutionalized approach versus other, I don't know, early stage sports tech investors. I don't know if that's like a fair way to frame it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a fair way to frame it either. Let me think how I would put it.
But yeah, I guess it would be like, what do you think gave you like the right to win, or like what made you different from just kind of like the landscape of early stage sports in investors? Like, yeah, aside from all the tech stuff,
Sure.
or maybe that is, you just have that approach, and like that's good enough.
I think it's a combination, Turner, of usually there are not that many firms that are focused on pre-seed and seed in this space that have the expertise and the focus. The intersection of my being a professional sports team owner, having been a very successful technology venture capitalist, and having dog fooded this using my own capital, and a lot of it for the last 4 years, I think puts me in an unusual category, which is probably why in this, challenging environment to raise for seed, that I was able to raise an institutional fund. Again, there are some firms that have invested in this space that are more commonly thought of as traditional VCs that I think have done fantastically well. And yeah, I guess one that I'll call out is Forerunner. They've got a handful of investments in this space that I think are really, really smart.
Interesting. I didn't even know that. I mean, I know Kirsten. I didn't know she was investing in sports.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say she is. They are investing in businesses that with their consumer lens, they feel they have an edge. Some of them happen to be in and around sports and gaming. Really smart. I mean, I expect nothing less out of Kirsten.
Yeah.
Which is just to say, there clearly are some firms that are those who you would consider more traditional tech VCs that are playing in this area. I would say at this point, she's downstream of me, right? Where she's managing way bigger dollars.
Yeah.
So being like this year, the 18 million Series A of Novig or whatever, and I'm 1 or 2 steps upstream of that. But the insights and the perspective is great. And to me, I'm excited to help those kinds of firms and others that start to realize that this is a really fertile area that can build multi-billion-dollar companies that have been systematically underinvested in, which I think will then create this flywheel of great founders saying, hey, I want to build in this area.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of my excitement for why sports media, entertainment tech, why now, is that we're already seeing so many smart founders who love sports, but are first and foremost great builders, starting to apply their brains in this space. But I think we're at the very, very beginning of this phenomenon.
It seems like there's just like a real lack of capital, and like it favors the capital. Like you can get a little boost to your returns versus if you go the other end of the spectrum, like AI stuff. Like it's definitely in the favor of the equity or the stock, like the founders, like the company, where the investors you're paying higher prices. So it's like they might be great businesses, but you're kind of like chopping. Like if you just think of an extreme end, like you invest in a company at 5 million post money versus 50 million post money, you just assume the outcome's the same. Maybe that's not the right way to do it, but it's like a 10x difference that you kind of missed out on by coming in at 50 instead of 5. So to your point is, if you think the outcomes are still going to be massive, you just get this extra tailwind from just a place that just doesn't have the same kind of like, I don't know, competition in a sense. And maybe we're ruining your edge right now talking about this, but also it's just, a lot of things like attracting downstream capital, right? Because like a lot of people still might say sports, like nothing there. Like I'm going to stick with AI. So it's like, I feel like that's part of the battle too, is like, can you get people to just care about this?
For sure. And that's our challenge. Our responsibility is to work with founders to get them to the point where they are venture backable downstream of us.
Yeah.
And then because so much of what we're doing has that deep technology component to it, the AI inside, where it's really the models themselves aren't novel, the applications are novel, or using cross models depending on the context within a single application. These are not things that are easily replicable. There is genuine IP in these businesses. So at the end of the day, Turner, I think what I'm doing isn't sports media entertainment tech VC. It's just tech VC. It's just this particular vector has some really compelling founders building really interesting products in areas that we believe have applications often well outside of sports. But sports is the best place to go to market and to hone the direct-to-consumer relationship, which I love. Like, to me, having that very narrow go-to-market and being able to just create these unbelievably passionate users that word of mouth tell others about it.
Yep.
Because I think one of the big issues, and I will say, something I fight with all the time in myself, even having been a reasonably successful VC for more than 2 decades, is that notion of, man, if I can't see a huge TAM, why am I spending my time on this? And then I need to constantly remind myself, great founders find the big TAM. And the most important thing is building and shipping great product that users are excited about, first and foremost, especially at the pre-seed and seed stage.
Yeah, because you can say huge TAM, but you just never get there because you didn't build a product and no one used it.
So 100%. So I really do. And this is something that my friend Harry Stebbings has said for a long time, that it's always a great reminder. It really is at the pre-seed and seed stage. It's about the founder and it's about their ability to ship a great product and create a super happy customer. And then everything springs from that.
And so what do you think have been the characteristics of founders throughout your career that have been able to do that? Is there anything that you typically are able to like pull out or that you're looking for?
I mean, every successful founder I've backed had deep empathy for the problem, deep understanding of that thing they're building towards. It wasn't an intellectual exercise where they're like, I'm really smart. I think that there's a need over here, and then I'm going to go build over here. And I'm not going to say that you can't build a great company that way. I am saying, in my experience, the best companies that I've been involved with, the founders were angry. They had a chip on their shoulder. There was something about either their own experience in using a product or trying to do something that was just such a crappy experience, or they had been building something. They were part of a company that first venture underperformed. They're enraged about it, and now they're going to go and do it right. Those two personas, to me, have been the most successful personas of anybody that I've backed in the past.
When you say angry, that's like a surprising, but you feel like that's important. Does it motivate you if you're
massively frustrated? Yeah. You know, if it was, I was involved in building something that maybe we had a hard time going to market. Maybe I disagreed with my co-founder. Maybe we were too early. Maybe we sold out too early to a terrible buyer that, wanted us to do things that we knew were bad.
Yep.
And so the dream was never realized. The underlying thesis for the dream hadn't changed. The realization had been truncated. So then they're able to start something that new with both the market knowledge, the passion, and a level of drive that is powered by the desire to win and to prove. I can say, that drives me.
I was going to say, did you have that at all? Did you have moments like that growing up, or?
I would say I had moments like that starting in college, just like elements of disbelief. For sure. Well, no, if I'm truly honest, it started before that.
Yeah.
My definitely a rocky relationship with my parents growing up, and they were trying their best, but they themselves were pretty messed up. And so they didn't believe that, or I wouldn't say this. They would not stipulate that I could do great things. My mom, again, and I ended up having a great relationship with my parents for 15 years before they died. But in that era, they didn't express belief in me. And my mom was always, prove it, prove it, prove it. Which didn't feel great as a kid. And that definitely was seeded this white hot fire inside me. And then when I was in college, I wanted to go to Wall Street, and coming out of University of Michigan in the mid 1980s, it was not a hotbed of Wall Street recruiting. And
how'd you do it? How did you make it? It worked.
It worked. I had a stack of rejection letters this thick.
You were literally writing people letters from Ann Arbor, or did you?
Of course.
To New York?
Oh no. I did both. I sent how many? I'm going to say 100, 125 letters to, what I did is I would cut out the tombstones of equity and debt offerings out of the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
And I would call and then send letters to every single one of those firms.
So their numbers were on the...
No, of course.
Would you look them up?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, this is an arduous, right? There was no internet.
You couldn't just go to LinkedIn or just connect with them and be like, I'd like to pick your brain.
There was no internet. It was, or public internet. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I just tried and tried and tried and tried and tried. And then finally, through somebody who lived on my same hall in my dorm freshman year, he was at Citi M&A. he said, oh, this, and we had a good relationship, and he knew of my job hunt. And I think he was valedictorian of the class before. So he got on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, the head of Asian M&A in New York is looking to hire an analyst. Can I put you up for it? I said, that would be fantastic. I went, I interviewed, and I got the job. That was the foot in the door. But it was brutal. Like,
all the steps leading up to that was like, but it probably prepared you, right? You were probably like ready to nail the interview.
100%. And so, but it was like, that was the white hot fire.
Mm.
And then it was leaving Wall Street and people saying, you're insane. Like,
yeah,
because
did you kind of like made it, quote unquote?
I mean,
you were like running a whole division, like a group, right?
And I was making nice 7-figure dollars, and yeah, things were pretty irie.
So why'd you do it? Because most people would say you're crazy for giving that up.
That's the point. Most people said I'm crazy because that feeling I described about leaving IA is how I felt then. Things had gotten very political, and I had a very senior job, and it ceased to be fun. Like, I learned so much. I was in derivatives for a long time, and I was at Citi and then went to Deutsche. I co-headed equity derivative structuring and marketing globally, and then became CEO of this large trading business. And it just became a drag. And I felt like I had done my learning and I needed to change. And it didn't matter if I was making great money. It felt at that point inauthentic and not fun. But again, like, disbelief, crazy. And then spent, 4+ years wandering in the desert doing my thing. Went through the GFC, hadn't drawn a paycheck for 4 years, 2 kids in school. Those were tough times, man. I mean, stress, a lot of, some of that founder existential, oh my God, like, should I go back to Wall Street type thing?
Yeah.
And go back to just making money, doing what I did for 17 years. And my wife, God bless her, was like, no, like, you made a plan. It's a great plan. You always told me, stick to the plan. And she's like, look, if at the end of the day, we need to sell this stuff and send our kids to public school and move to a suburb, that's fine. Like, we're fine.
Yeah.
So, a year later, things recovered. My investments did great. And I had this vision for IA, and that's how I started IA.
So then how did you convince people when you made the transition, you started raising money for? Because they might say, Wall Street guy, what do you know about backing founders? Like, get out of here. Like, we want someone who was like I guess at the time, maybe like early Yahoo or something, or like a Google employee or something.
Yeah. I mean, so this was 2009 is when I started talking, the middle of 2009, when I started talking to people about IA. And for sure, like, because of the angel investing I had done and relationships I had with some fantastic GPs, I was able to get amazing LP meetings, top fund of funds, endowments, whatever.
How'd those go?
So great to meet me, but disbelief for sure. And
what was the pushback? It was just that we probably don't think you're the right fit for
well,
that.
Also remember, we're coming out of the global financial crisis. Most LPs are puking out risk, now putting on net new risk.
Yeah.
Emerging managers were not a thing yet. And I did not look like your normal central casting VC.
Yeah.
So it was more, very polite, but just like, let's stay in touch.
Yeah.
So I ended up kind of brute forcing a first close with non-traditional investors. I had multiple proprietary trading firms, so a few ultra high net worth individuals, my own money. So a small but very non-traditional LP base, and brute forced a first close of 17 million. But I had planted all these seeds with these traditional LPs, and I told them exactly what I was going to do, which was, we are going to build a concentrated seed state strategy. We are going to lead rounds and be ownership sensitive out of New York City in technology.
Which that was all pretty much not Not that was very contrarian at the time, not consensus.
Very contrarian. New York area, you had USB and you had RE and you had first rounds, but there was very little true seed and pre-seed money in the city.
Was it mostly angels? Like if you wanted to raise $1 million or $2
there was
million,
like New York Angels, 100%. It was it's hard to believe because the New York ecosystem now is so strong.
Yeah.
But
now like everyone has a fund and like
now 16 years ago, I mean, and again, this is like Meetup hadn't really gone full bore yet. It had started, but it's just like the ecosystem hadn't really developed. And so, but I put this stake in the ground. And also remember, big data is an investable theme, emerging manager, New York. Well, fast forward from Q3 of 2009 to Q3 of 2010, the market had recovered. Emerging managers were a thing. Big data was hot. And people started to believe in New York. And all of a sudden, my $17 million fund with 25 on the cover, we had 85 million of institutional demand and ended up getting an LP waiver. We had a hard cap of 40. We ended up taking 50. And at that point, we had convinced, so we were Michael Kim's first LP commitment at Sendana.
Yep.
Before Sendana was Sendana. And we got Horsley Bridge. And we were one of Phil Horsley's, I think we were Phil Horsley's last fund that he was involved in the decision with. And then Fred Giuffreda, Elizabeth Obershaw on the team took it over from there. And then we just started to go. But again, massive disbelief, just unbelievable fire on my part to make this thing work and to prove it. And, I'm super, super proud of what IA accomplished and continues to accomplish and what the brand means in the market. Now I feel that same disbelief about this theme and thesis at this point in this space at a time that's very, very hard for pre-seed and seed. And I have that same fire to prove it.
So this might be, I'm asking this because there's a lot of probably emerging managers out there that are listening to this. How did you get through that 18-month, 12-month kind of moment of like everything coming together from probably like all no's to then suddenly like the yeses? Like were there certain moments or certain things that you did that kind of helped things come together? And I ask because I just know a lot of people they probably are like, ask them about this. How did you actually like raise the first fund? I think it's just a common question that a lot of people have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so just for as a reminder, right? So I had a very clear thesis. I think clear differentiation is critical. Like, does the world need another smart young kid with a generalist tech fund? Oh, I have access to N network. Like, that's all over. Yeah. It's like you need a take that is novel and not for novelty's sake, because you actually believe you have an edge. And if you don't, then you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. It's just, come on, Turner. You know this. I mean, you're a hell of a lot younger than me, but you know, and even I know, having accomplished what I've accomplished, this is a hard business, a soul-crushing business. Unless you really want to do it and you really think you can be great at it, do not do it. Don't do it. The same advice that I give founders. Like, I want to start a company. No, you don't. Like, you have to be crazy. You need to be crazy to be a founder. You need to be crazy to be a VC. And I know that the narrative, VC, man, being a startup VC, we're not talking about the venerable firms with the billions under management that are clipping coupons in Silicon Valley. We're talking about starting a business. Starting a business in the world of venture capital is insanely difficult for all but the select few that are spinning out of a venerable firm and where they themselves have a huge brand.
Yeah.
I did not, right? I did not have a big brand. I had a very clear thesis. I had done angel investing, and so I was founder referenceable. And again, even if you're a young kid, you can put small amounts of money to work or advise companies such that when an LP calls a founder, they're like, yeah, tell me about Turner. They're like, he was super helpful, gave me great perspective on my product, introduced me to these two potential hires, whatever it is. You need to be referenceable. It can't just be story. So clear thesis, a track record of your own making, right? So this advising, angel investing, something where you've actually got something you can point to.
Yep.
And then it is putting a stake in the ground. Here's what I'm going to do. You may not back me today. I'm going to stay in touch, and I'm going to tell you that I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. And you will be surprised. You will be shocked. And that's essentially what I did, is, again, that brute force that first close with people who knew me. And I did have the advantage of having enough people with enough money who had enough belief in me to at least get me to 17 million.
Yep.
And that was important. Going from 17 to 85, so literally 5 times the interest, was a function of investing a lot of time in seed planting. And by the way, the warm introductions to LPs is critical. So you can point to my LP relationships as having been seeded by Fred Wilson, Josh Koppelman, Matt Harris of Bain, I think Jeff Busgang. There's very few people, but friends, mentors, people that I had worked with in my angel investing. And they were incredibly kind and generous to make introductions to some of the endowments and fund of funds that they had close relationships with, where they're like, you should really look at Roger. Like, want to make the connection. Like, that means a lot. And by the way, now, so shoe on the other foot, I get asked all the time, can you introduce me to these people? The answer is yes, if I believe that I would put my imprimatur behind you, right? Because I'm not just going to connect somebody because I have a relationship.
Yeah, you're going to bat. You're saying you should spend a lot of time and probably put some money into this person.
So, and I have, invested in a wide array of funds as an LP. That's obviously the surest way to get a referral, but I've made others, as long as I feel like the people are basically have what I said, compelling thesis, compelling background, differentiation, and referenceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. And one thing I wanted to ask you, I know we got probably like 11 minutes left. It's 10:34. I want to make sure we hit enough stuff. So how did Fund 1 end up going? Like, did it go well? Did you lose all the money? Did you make money? What was the...
You're saying IA Fund 1?
IA Fund 1, yeah.
So IA Fund 1, 50 million is right about 10 DPI and 13 TVPI.
Nice. That's pretty good. That's one of those legendary 10x funds.
Yeah.
And then so I think I think I'm understanding this right. Was the trade desk one of the big ones?
Yes.
In that one?
So Fund 1, the big ones were Trade Desk, Datadog. Those were the two biggest. And we still have some pretty good stuff in there, even after all these years. But then Fund 2 was better. Yeah, so Fund 2 was 105 million, and that was Wise and DigitalOcean and some other interesting stuff. But those are the two that have driven returns the most right now. And that's like 14.5, 15 DPI.
Wow.
20 TVPI.
Nice. Well, that's also pretty decent. And then I think one thing that I thought was super interesting hearing you a year ago, not this last VC summit at Michigan, but the one, I think last year, you talked a lot about with the trade desk. I think you raised, like the company raised and you put in, there was like 2 or 3 bridge rounds. Like I think you probably invested a bunch of times in that one. What's just generally kind of like the story arc behind the trade desk?
Yeah. So, Jeff Green is one of those people. Nobody knew the space of programmatic better than Jeff. He had co-founded a company called ACN that ultimately was sold to Microsoft in a really frustrating, annoying deal. He was not happy about it. And both pre and post didn't really want to sell. And then when they sold, didn't like the experience of being part of the organization, had hyper clarity on what he wanted to build, but it was in a space that felt very overinvested in. Because at that point, you had all of these like new age ad tech companies that position themselves as tech companies, but, I would argue were more tech powered agencies like Turn and MediaMath, DataZoo, that had raised hundreds of millions of venture dollars. AppNexus.
So this was like as the market was starting to pull back for like ad tech, quote unquote, or was it still kind of a hot category?
It was hot, but not for net new investment. It had received a lot of investment, but Jeff and we believed that it was investment in the wrong areas. And so he, again, is probably among the greatest examples of the chip on your shoulder founder who had deep, deep, deep understanding of and empathy for the problem. And talk about a tough environment, racing for the trade desk in late 2009, he spoke to everybody. Such a hard time. It was brutal. And he didn't have a product. He had a PowerPoint. He hadn't brought on his co-founder yet, but he could articulate very clearly what the plan was and what go-to-market was.
Yep.
And, we ended up partnering with Founder Collective. Eric Paley and I worked very closely with Jeff, and they were amazing. Founder Collective's awesome. They were the best partners. And so we stuck by them through that initial seed and then 3 small bridges and then to a small Series A. And it was really, and then there was this big, like I said, air gap, because then once they put product in market and Jeff had built a great product and had already laid the railroad track for distribution, once they had built the technology to the point where it could perform relative to the other RTBs that were out there and even better, that's what happened. Then it was rocket ship. And then we had a chance to write one more check in the Series B. And we actually recycled capital from our sale of Simple to BBVA and put that in their Series B. And that, even at a, almost a 20x higher valuation than the Series A, still ended up paying more than 30x.
Yeah. And then I think you mentioned that as like a kind of a part of the strategy was recycling. How do you recommend approaching that as an early stage manager? Because you just don't know what the recycling is going to look like, right? Like you don't know if you're going to get anything.
You don't. And that is a real challenge of being a very early stage investor is, are you going to have recycling in time to be able to invest in those rounds in your existing portfolio companies? Look, you're going to get recycling at some point. It just might not be at the point that you want it. And that's frustrating. But it kind of is what it is. I said this recently to somebody that the ultimate way to combat that, if you can do it, which is hard, is to have similar LPs across funds. So you then can do seamless cross-fund investing without concern about conflicts.
Yep.
Because then you literally can take Fund A plus Fund B, add them together, and that's effectively how you can manage that fund. Because if you have a Fund 1 portfolio company, there's an exciting opportunity. You don't have sufficient capital to make that investment. Fund 2 can invest in that Fund 1 company if you have similar LPs. But cross-fund is a way to address that issue. But if you don't have perfect symmetry in your LPs, then you're taking a significant reputational risk if that turns out to be a bad check. So, we had looked at some opportunities at IA Fund 1 before ultimate Fund 2 and Fund 3 we were able to achieve symmetry, but Fund 1 and Fund 2 were not. So there was a time in a Fund 1 company when we were seriously considering doing cross-fund, and we spoke to the LPAC, and they ultimately said, you can do it, just understand, it better work.
Yeah.
Right, just because like it's a reputational risk. So we elected ultimately not to do it. So look, at some point you're going to get recycling that you will be able to deploy. It just might not be exactly when you feel you want it.
So I have two questions I really wanted to ask you that most people who I talked to before this, like, you got to ask them with this. So I got to make sure we fit them in. One was, I think you kind of alluded to it. After you stepped back from IA, you started to work with your kids a little bit. Just generally speaking, what's that been like? What's it like working with your kids?
I mean, it's been great. Was never the plan, which I think is part of the reason why it's great. We didn't have a family business ever. It's only after I left IA and started kind of investing out of our family office that this enterprise started to look like a family thing. But at that point, older son Andrew was working at Data Robot as a product manager, and younger son Ethan was still at Michigan Ross. As I started to get deal flow in this area, though, I started just to send the deals to the boys just to get their perspective. And so they're doing their lives, and we're starting to collaborate, and I'm putting some family money to work in some of these companies. And then a few years in, they approach my wife and me and say, we'd really like to work with Dad. And it was not just, sure, sounds great. Like, we had a lot of conversations about it. And, one of the hallmarks of my relationship with my wife, Karen, she's a clinical psychologist. We're very tuned into communication and transparency and everything being out there. Working with your kids can be fraught, right? Kind of, especially like a family as close as ours, where we so value the personal relationship, the friend and parental. Adding work to that, we needed to put some guardrails in place that if for whatever reason we couldn't keep these three roles in our heads at the same time, and acknowledging that if they're working with me, they're working for me, and I'm their boss, and there's going to be feedback, but it all needed to be okay. So a lot of work up front went into the notion of, okay, let's try this. And fast forward, it has worked really well. Each boy is now doing what seems to be their calling. In Andrew's case, he was working on kind of the sports and media stuff with Ethan until I started really going very deep in business building in Detroit. And then Andrew came out to be a partner in that with a partner of ours. And it's just crushing it. Super happy. Actually just bought a house in Detroit and is putting down roots. So that has been, it's incredibly gratifying for me to see him so happy and so effective, yet doing something that touches the family. And then Ethan recently graduated from Columbia with a master's in sports management and had been kind of working with me while he was in school since graduating from Michigan. And now he's kind of come to be like an associate in Game Changers. And, it's an institutional venture fund. It's not nepotistic. I mean, this either will or will not be a great fit for him. And, we brought in a partner, Simon Sokol, to join us, who's fantastic. So we're really building an independent firm. But this is something that Ethan was really excited to dig into. And it's nice to work with him every day.
Yeah, it's probably like one of those things. To your point, it's nice to work. Like, you get to spend more time and like develop an even stronger relationship, and like maybe you work better together than if you weren't father and son. I mean, there's probably downside of like, maybe there's like more or less honesty in some cases. Like, I'm willing to bring something up sooner rather than later, or there's like, is there any of like, you brought it up, so maybe there's not this, but like the sensitivity around feedback, or you're just like,
No.
You got to fix this.
That
Yeah. Okay.
No, that's the whole thing is it's normal.
Yeah.
I treat him as I would another 25-year-old smart young person working for me.
Yeah. You mentioned Andrew's helping with this thing called Brand Detroit. What's sort of the story behind that? Like what is it? And then how did that kind of come to be?
Sure. So precursor to Brand Detroit is I co-founded a real estate business in Detroit called Greatwater Opportunity Capital and Greatwater Homes. And so 4 of us have been working on this since 2018. And we're now the largest naturally occurring affordable homeowner in Detroit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have about 2,100 affordable units across the city.
What does that mean, naturally affordable?
Meaning we don't get government subsidies. There is not a government program that is giving us money. It's not subsidized housing.
Oh, that's bold, because you could have done that.
It's for me and our partners, that distorts outcomes. Like, we want to rebuild neighborhoods using capital that can earn a market return. So the bar is necessarily high. But because of the makeup of Detroit, it's not as hard as you would think. Most of our stuff is between 60 and 80% of AMI, which is affordable, and by definition. We also have started building single-family homes in the East Village.
In New York?
East Village, Detroit.
East Village, Detroit. Okay. I didn't
Right.
know that was a thing.
It's a huge thing.
Okay.
And you should look at Greatwater Homes. Look it up. It's right next to Indian Village, with all the mansions. And it's incredible. We've developed a home product that nobody else in the country has. A true, energy efficient, affordable, ultra high quality starter home. 1,000 to 1,800 square feet, not including a 600 square foot finished basement. And we are reprogramming this entire once great neighborhood, doing so with input of the local community.
Mm-hmm.
And these houses are being sold as fast as we can make them. And Andrew bought one of those houses in East Village.
So he's like really dog fooding it.
He is dog fooding it.
Nice.
Then where did Brand Detroit come from? One of the other partners of Greatwater and I, a guy named Jon Oberheide, very successful tech entrepreneur, founded Hook Logic that was sold to Criteo for $250 million. Also from the Detroit area, industrial engineer from Michigan. He started going deep in the food, hospitality, and beverage community in Detroit. And from that, we saw all of this incredible well of entrepreneurship in and around food culture here. We then partnered with the founder of Marrow, King Ho, became part owners of Marrow, started a wholesale meat business called Marrow Detroit Provisions. Our meat's carried at Zingerman's, Plum Market, Bush's, and that's expanding. We then bought some buildings in Eastern Market, 3 of the iconic buildings on Fisher Service Road. That
You like those like brick kind of warehousey ones that I'm thinking of? Okay.
Exactly. And Eastern Market is the largest and oldest food market of its type in the country. Food culture in Michigan is incredible, and the agricultural community. So we actually are getting ready to open a Marrow butcher shop, retail counter, bar, restaurant, and event space in one of our buildings on 2442 Riot Bell. And then we have the building just next to a 1530 Winder, which is going to be home of our venture studio. And we recently brought on a new partner, somebody with 30 years of brand building experience from 0 to $1 billion, to run the venture studio as our partner. And then we have 2448 Market, this very famous building with the mural with the watermelon on it. That's like the Total Wine building that we're programming to do something very exciting that we're hopefully going to be able to announce and before the end of the year.
Okay. So how do you do all this well? Because you're doing a lot of different things. That is something a couple people were like, oh, you gotta ask them about. It's just like, how do you do a good job when you're doing so many different seemingly non-related things? Is there like a thread of commonality or?
So the commonality is that I work with great people. And in the case of Brand Detroit, Jon Oberheide runs that. Andrew really works for Jon and the head of the venture studio. Great Water is run by Matt Temkin and Justin Golden. I run sports. That's what I run. That when I wake up in the morning, that's what I'm thinking about. So I run Game Changers. I run the family franchise portfolio. So in terms of my bandwidth is devoted to the sports media entertainment business. I have helped co-found, seeded, and effectively serve as a board member of these other activities, but it's not my day-to-day.
So it's really just partnering with the right people. It's like finding a really good co-founder. And
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Roger, this is a lot of fun. I know you got to get going, but yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Turner. This has been great.
And thank you for listening. Thanks again to Hanover Park for supporting this episode. Head to hanoverpark.com/Turner to upgrade your fund admin to the 21st century. If you missed it, make sure to check out last week's episode with Daksh Gupta, co-founder of Greptile, on all things AI coding. And tune in next week for Will Gabrick at Stripe on stablecoins, AI, and if they'll ever go public. If you like this conversation, please like, comment, subscribe, and name your next sports team after me. If you don't want to miss a future episode, subscribe to my newsletter, The Split, linked in the description to get each episode plus a transcript emailed directly to your inbox every week. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.